What if I told you there is a car made entirely of highly flammable magnesium that mysteriously vanished from the face of the Earth? Or a vehicle so incredibly tiny that it doesn't even have a reverse gear, forcing the driver to literally drag it by a handle? Welcome, gearheads and curiosity seekers. Today we are looking at 10 insanely weird cars you will not believe actually exist. From multi-million-dollar corporate disasters to bizarre three-wheeled wonders built for billionaires, this list will completely blow your mind. Hit that subscribe button right now and let me know in the comments, what is the absolute weirdest vehicle you have ever seen on the road? Let us dive in. The aftermath of World War II left Japan in a state of rebuilding, and the population desperately needed affordable, reliable transportation to get the economy moving again. Enter the concept of the K-car, a strictly regulated class of microcars designed to be incredibly cheap to build, cheap to buy, and highly fuel-efficient. However, early K-cars were essentially just glorified scooters with a roof, lacking the comfort and feel of a real automobile. That all changed when Mazda, a company primarily known at the time for building three-wheeled cargo trucks, decided to enter the passenger car market. They did not just want to build another basic runabout, they wanted to build a microscopic marvel that actually felt like a proper civilized car. Unveiled in 1960, the Mazda R360 was a masterclass in extreme weight reduction and ingenious engineering. To keep the car nimble, Mazda engineers utilized lightweight materials that were practically unheard of in cheap economy cars at the time. They used aluminum for the engine block and a magnesium alloy for the transmission casing and oil pan. The rear window was even made of plexiglass instead of heavy glass. The result? The entire car weighed a shockingly low 838 pounds. Powering this featherweight champion was a tiny rear-mounted 356 cubic centimeter V-twin engine that produced a whopping 16 horsepower. It was not going to win any drag races, but it was incredibly innovative. The impact of the R360 was immediate and explosive. On the very first day it went on sale, Mazda received a staggering 4,500 orders, instantly capturing nearly two-thirds of the Japanese microcar market. It gave thousands of families their first taste of private car ownership, offering a level of sophistication that completely disrupted the industry. Today, while it might look like a cute, oversized toy to the modern American eye, the R360 is deeply respected by collectors as the legendary vehicle that effectively launched Mazda's passenger car empire. Finding one in pristine condition today is a rarity, and they command a surprising premium at classic Japanese domestic market auctions. When you think of high-performance sports cars, you probably picture sleek Ferraris or aggressive Porsches. You definitely do not picture a tiny fiberglass boat-looking thing with absolutely no doors. But in the late 1950s, an Australian company decided to take the chassis of a German microcar and turn it into one of the weirdest sports cars ever conceived, the Goggomobil Dart. Australia had a booming market for small, affordable cars, but import tariffs made European sports cars far too expensive for the average person. So, a clever Sydney-based company called Buckle Motors imported the bare rolling chassis of the German Goggomobil microcar and designed their own radical, ultra-lightweight fiberglass body to drop right on top of it. The design of the Dart is where things get truly insane. True to its name, the car is shaped literally like a dart. It is pointed at the front, sweeping back with almost zero aerodynamic resistance. But the craziest part? It has absolutely no doors. To get into a Goggomobil Dart, you have to literally step over the side of the bodywork and slide down into the tiny cabin. There is no roof, barely a windshield, and the entire car is so low to the ground that you could easily reach out and touch the pavement while driving. It looks less like a street-legal vehicle and more like an amusement park bumper car that somehow escaped into real traffic. Despite having a minuscule rear-mounted two-stroke engine that produced a measly 15 horsepower, the Dart offered an exhilarating driving experience. Because the fiberglass body was so incredibly light, meaning the whole car weighed only 760 pounds, and because you were sitting mere inches from the asphalt, Doing 50 miles per hour felt like you were breaking the sound barrier. Only about 700 of these bizarre little darts were ever produced, making them an incredibly rare oddity today. Originally sold as a cheap, fun alternative to a real sports car, a well-preserved Goggomobil Dart can now fetch upwards of $30,000 at modern classic car auctions. In the years immediately following World War II, the American automotive landscape was entirely dominated by massive, heavy, chrome-covered land yachts. But one man, Powell Crosley Jr., had a completely different vision. He believed America needed a small, affordable, and efficient car. Crosley was a brilliant industrialist who had already made millions selling radios and refrigerators, and he applied that same mass-market logic to automobiles. In 1949, he introduced the Crosley Hot Shot, a vehicle that holds the bizarre distinction of being America's very first post-war sports car. It actually beat the iconic Chevrolet Corvette to the market by a full 4 years. To call the Hot Shot stripped down would be the understatement of the century. It had bug-eyed headlights that protruded from the hood, no trunk lid, no roof, and just like the Dart, absolutely no doors. If you wanted to get in, you stepped over the side. The car was incredibly basic, featuring a tiny engine that produced just 26 horsepower. But Crosley had a secret weapon. The Hot Shot was remarkably innovative underneath its goofy exterior. It featured an overhead camshaft engine and was the very first American production car to be fitted with four-wheel disc brakes, a technology that would not become standard on most cars for decades. Because it was so incredibly light and featured those advanced brakes, the funny-looking Hot Shot became an accidental racing legend. In 1950, a virtually stock Crosley Hot Shot entered the very first endurance race at Sebring and actually won the Index of Performance, beating out massive, powerful European sports cars. It was a true David versus Goliath story on the racetrack. Originally, you could buy a Hot Shot brand new for less than $1,000. Today, because of their unique place in American racing history and their undeniable weirdness, collectors eagerly snatch them up, with pristine examples selling for over $25,000. After World War II, the German aviation industry was completely dismantled. Aircraft manufacturers were strictly banned from building airplanes, leaving them with massive factories, skilled engineers, and absolutely no products to sell. To survive, companies like Messerschmitt and Heinkel had to pivot entirely, turning their expertise in aerodynamics and lightweight materials toward the automotive world. The result was the birth of the bubble car era, and the Heinkel Kabine, introduced in 1956, is perhaps the strangest and most fascinating example of an airplane company trying to build a car for the road. The cabine looks exactly like what it is, the cockpit of a fighter plane chopped off and put on 3 wheels. Its most insane feature is the way you get inside. There are no side doors. Instead, the entire front of the car, including the windshield, swings open like a giant refrigerator door. You step straight into the front of the vehicle, sit down, and close the front of the car over yourself. Unlike its famous rival, the BMW Isetta, which had the steering column attached to the moving door, the Heinkel steering wheel remained fixed in place, meaning you had to carefully squeeze past it to get to the seat. Despite looking completely ridiculous, the cabine was an engineering triumph. Because Heinkel used aircraft manufacturing techniques, the cabine was lighter, faster, and more fuel-efficient than its competitors. It even featured a reverse gear, a luxury that many microcars of the era completely lacked. It was powered by a tiny single-cylinder engine that could achieve up to 90 miles per gallon, making it the perfect solution for fuel-starved post-war Europe. Today, these aircraft-inspired bubbles are highly coveted by collectors of eccentric automobiles, often selling for $40,000 to $50,000 at auction, a massive leap from their humble utilitarian beginnings. If you thought the Heinkel was small, prepare yourself for the absolute king of microscopic motoring. Manufactured in the 1960s on the Isle of Man, a tiny island situated between Great Britain and Ireland, the Peel P50 holds the official Guinness World Record as the smallest production car ever made. The Peel Engineering Company primarily made fiberglass boat hulls and fairings for motorcycles, but the owner decided to create an ultra-compact commuter vehicle capable of seating one adult and one shopping bag. The result was a vehicle so hilariously small that it makes a modern smart car look like a massive 18-wheeler truck. The specifications of the P50 read like a joke. It has 3 wheels, 1 single door on the left side, 1 windshield wiper, and 1 headlight. It is just 54 inches long and 39 inches wide, meaning it can literally fit through a standard office door. It was powered by a 49 cubic centimeter moped engine making just over 4 horsepower, giving it a terrifying top speed of roughly 38 miles per hour. But the craziest part, to save weight and cost, the transmission had no reverse gear whatsoever. If you drove into a tight spot, you had to manually drag the rear end around. The P50 faded into obscurity until it was famously featured on the global hit television show Top Gear, where host Jeremy Clarkson drove one through the halls of the BBC television center and even took it into an elevator. That single television appearance rocketed the little car from a forgotten oddity to a global pop culture icon. Originally retailing for about $250 in 1962, original P50s are now some of the most sought-after microcars on the planet. In 2016, an original model sold at a Sotheby's auction for an absolutely mind-blowing $176,000. In the late 1950s, Italy was experiencing a massive economic boom. The working class was happily driving the cheap, practical, and iconic Fiat 500. But what about the wealthy Italians? What did a rich socialite or a fashion designer drive when they wanted something tiny to navigate the narrow cobblestone streets of Rome or Milan, but refused to be seen in a peasant's car? The answer was the Autobianchi Bianchina Trasformabile. It was essentially a luxury microcar. That is a concept that sounds like a complete contradiction, but the Italians pulled it off with spectacular style and flair. Underneath the beautiful exterior, the Bianchina was mechanically identical to the humble Fiat 500, sharing its tiny rear-mounted air-cooled 2-cylinder engine. But Autobianchi completely redesigned the body to look like a shrunken-down high-end American luxury cruiser from the 1950s. It featured gorgeous two-tone paint jobs, excessive chrome trim, white-wall tires, and a luxurious interior. But its weirdest and most defining feature was the suicide doors, which were doors that hinged at the rear and opened backward. It also featured a folding canvas roof, allowing the wealthy elite to soak up the Mediterranean sun while driving to their favorite cafes. The Bianchina quickly became the ultimate status symbol for the European upper crust. It was essentially the 1960s equivalent of a rich celebrity buying a custom golf cart to drive around their massive estate. It even became a movie star, famously driven by the bumbling Inspector Clouseau in the original Pink Panther films, and actually owned by Star Wars creator George Lucas in his youth. It proves that weirdness is not just about being cheap or utilitarian. Sometimes it is about cramming maximum luxury into a space no bigger than a bathtub. Today, a pristine Bianchina can easily command over $40,000. While most car companies spend millions of dollars trying to make their vehicles safer, quieter, and more technologically advanced, the Morgan Motor Company in England actively refuses to join the modern century. The Morgan three-wheeler is a vehicle that makes absolutely no logical sense in the modern world. Originally, three-wheeled cars were popular in the United Kingdom in the 1920s because they were legally classified as motorcycles, allowing owners to dodge heavy automobile taxes. Morgan revived the concept in 2011, deciding to build a brand new car that actively mimics the terrifying, visceral experience of flying a World War I biplane. Everything about the Morgan three-wheeler is wonderfully, insanely weird. For starters, the massive thumping V-twin motorcycle engine is not hidden under a hood. It is bolted completely exposed to the very front of the car, sitting ahead of the grille like a shiny metal heart. The exhaust pipes run straight down the sides of the open cockpit, mere inches from your arms, ready to burn you if you are not careful. Oh, and beneath its retro-styled aluminum body panels, the structural frame of the car is literally made out of ash wood. Yes, Morgan was still building the skeletons of their cars out of trees. Driving a Morgan three-wheeler is a pure assault on the senses. There are no doors, no roof, no heater, no radio, and absolutely no electronic safety nets. You strap yourself into the tiny cockpit, fire up the vibrating engine, and hold on for dear life as the single rear wheel aggressively pushes you down the road. It is loud, it is uncomfortable, and it is completely impractical. Yet there is a multi-year waiting list to buy one. Wealthy enthusiasts happily pay over $50,000 for the privilege of driving a wooden three-wheeled car that looks like it time-traveled from 1925. Not all weird cars are small, lovable underdogs. Some are massive, catastrophic failures, orchestrated by the biggest companies on Earth. In the mid-1950s, the Ford Motor Company was riding high, and they decided to launch an entirely new luxury car brand called Edsel. Ford hyped the Edsel as the car of the future, pouring a staggering $250 million, which is over $2.5 billion in today's money, into research, development, and a massive marketing campaign. When the Edsel Corsair was finally unveiled to the public in late 1957, the world held its breath. And then the world burst into laughter. The Edsel Corsair was meant to be a technological marvel, featuring a push-button automatic transmission located directly in the center of the steering wheel and a rolling dome speedometer. But nobody cared about the technology because of the car's horrifying exterior design. The front of the Edsel featured a massive vertical oval grille that the designers intended to look futuristic. Instead, the American public thought it looked completely bizarre. Critics famously and ruthlessly described the grille as looking like an Oldsmobile sucking a lemon, or far worse, resembling a horse collar. It was an absolute public relations disaster for the brand. The Edsel Corsair became a textbook example of corporate hubris. The bizarre styling, combined with an economic recession and severe quality control issues, caused sales to plummet. Ford quietly killed the entire Edsel brand just 3 years later, swallowing one of the most embarrassing and expensive financial losses in corporate history. For decades, the name Edsel was synonymous with failure. However, time heals all wounds. Because they were such a spectacular flop, very few Edsels survived the junkyard. Today, collectors actively hunt down the Corsair specifically because of its infamous history, with immaculate models selling for over $60,000 at classic car auctions. Imagine you are an Italian billionaire in the late 1950s. You have a massive luxury yacht docked in Monaco, but you have a very specific problem. When you dock your yacht and want to drive into town to get a cappuccino, your wet swimsuit ruins the expensive leather seats of your Ferrari. This incredibly specific rich person problem led to the creation of one of the weirdest and most delightful cars in history, the Fiat 500 Jolly. Legend has it that Gianni Agnelli, the ultra-wealthy head of Fiat, wanted a small car specifically designed to be hoisted onto his sailing yacht. Fiat took their standard cheap 500 economy car and handed it over to the legendary design house Ghia. Ghia took a saw and completely chopped off the roof, the side windows, and the doors. They added a fringed canvas Surrey top that looked like it belonged on a beach umbrella and painted the cars in vibrant pastel colors. But the most insane feature of the Jolly was the interior. The standard seats were completely ripped out and replaced with seats made entirely of hand-woven wicker. The wicker seats were completely waterproof, meaning billionaires could jump straight from the ocean into the car. The Fiat Jolly was never meant for the masses. It was a pure toy for the global elite. Aristotle Onassis owned one, as did actor John Wayne. They were the ultimate symbol of a carefree, incredibly wealthy lifestyle. Because they were essentially novelty items, very few original Jollies survived the harsh, salty seaside environments they were kept in. While a standard Fiat 500 from the era might cost you $15,000 today, an authentic Ghia-built Fiat Jolly is a serious collector's item. In recent years, these doorless wicker seat beach buggies have crossed auction blocks for well over $100,000. Finally, we arrive at a car so weird, so advanced, and so incredibly dangerous that it almost sounds like a myth. At the 1935 Paris Motor Show, the legendary French automaker Bugatti unveiled a concept car that stopped the world in its tracks, the Type 57S Aerolithe. Designed by Jean Bugatti, the car looked like an alien spaceship. It featured sweeping teardrop-shaped fenders, a split rear window, and a prominent fin running dead down the center of the car, from the grille all the way to the rear bumper. It was stunning, but the weirdest part was what it was made of. Bugatti was obsessed with making the Aerolithe as light as humanly possible, so he decided to build the entire body out of a material called electron. Electron was a magnesium alloy primarily used in aircraft fuselage. It was incredibly light and very strong, but it had one massive flaw: magnesium is highly combustible. If you try to weld electron, it will literally burst into a blindingly hot, unextinguishable white flame. Because they could not weld the car together, Bugatti engineers had to meticulously rivet the body panels together externally, which is why the car had that iconic riveted spine. You were driving a rolling fire hazard. The story of the Aerolithe ends in complete mystery. Only one was ever built. After the Paris Motor Show and a brief testing period, the car completely vanished from the face of the earth. Some historians believe the Bugatti factory quietly dismantled it to reuse the valuable chassis, while others whisper that it was hidden away before the outbreak of World War II to protect it from invading forces and remains buried in a secret bunker somewhere in France. If the original magnesium Aerolithe were ever discovered today, experts estimate it would easily command well over $100 million at auction. From billionaires building doorless beach cruisers for their mega yachts to a missing magnesium masterpiece that could be worth $100 million, the automotive world is packed with unbelievable, bizarre history. Which of these 10 insanely weird cars would you actually have the guts to take for a spin? Drop your answer in the comments below. If you enjoyed this wild ride through automotive history, make sure to smash that subscribe button, leave a like, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next countdown. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.